Let me tell you something truly remarkable, almost paradoxical, about the presence of silence in our relentlessly noisy digital age. We find ourselves living in a world where the impulse to share has become almost instinctual, a default mode of existence. From the triumphant milestones of birthdays to the mundane ritual of a coffee cup, from breathtaking sunsets to raw, unfiltered tears, from bursts of laughter to even the quiet anguish of pain, carefully curated with filters, virtually every facet of life is broadcast. Yet, amidst this cacophony of shared experiences, there exists a curious anomaly. Some individuals remain utterly invisible. They navigate the endless feeds quietly, observing with a profound depth that belies their stillness, but rarely, if ever, contribute a post of their own. You might know such a person. Perhaps even you times are times such a person. This persistent anonymity inevitably sparks a lingering question in the minds of many. Why? Why would someone deliberately choose to remain unseen when the entire global stage seems to be clamoring for attention, each voice shouting louder than the last? It's often tempting to dismiss such individuals as merely shy or introverted, but that simplistic explanation barely scratches the surface. Beneath this quiet exterior lies a rich, intricate tapestry of psychology, a profound interplay of human nature, self-perception, and a subtle yet powerful rebellion against a culture utterly consumed by the pursuit of visibility. For these quiet observers, silence is far from an empty void. It is, in fact, an active, conscious exercise of control. It represents the sovereign power to choose precisely what aspects of one's inner world, one's daily life, and one's deeply held truths the world will not times, be privy to. Whether we consciously acknowledge it or not, the pervasive influence of social media has subtly but profoundly redefined the very contours of how we construct and define our identities. It has established a new reward system, one that lavishly praises public display and vociferously applauds noise. And yet, with an almost poetic irony, those who deliberately choose to inhabit the shadows are often the very ones who possess the clearest, most unclouded vision. They watch, absorbing every detail without the compulsive need to interrupt or interject. They reflect deeply, allowing thoughts to mature before articulating a reaction. They scrutinize and comprehend before passing judgment. Psychologists have unearthed a fascinating correlation in their studies. Individuals who consistently refrain from frequent posting often exhibit significantly higher scores on a cluster of highly valuable psychological traits. These include robust self-restraint, a profound capacity for introspection, and a well-developed sense of emotional independence. They tend to be considerably less susceptible to the pervasive anxieties of social comparison, the constant internal ledger-keeping against others' highlight reels, and the insatiable hunger for external validation. In essence, their journey is not about constructing a publicly acceptable persona or desperately striving to prove who they are to an external audience. Instead, their deepest endeavor is an internal one, to genuinely understand the complex, evolving landscape of their own being. In a world increasingly saturated, if not entirely drowning, in meticulously orchestrated performances, such an authentic quest is incredibly rare, almost anachronistic. Let's be brutally honest with ourselves. The vast majority of what we choose to post online transcends mere communication. It is, at its core, a sophisticated form of identity crafting, an often unconscious, yet deeply felt audition for belonging. Every carefully chosen caption, every artfully filtered photograph, every meticulously worded status update implicitly asks a fundamental question. This is who I am. Do you approve? Do you accept me? But a remarkable transformation occurs when one consciously chooses to cease posting. A profound shift takes place. You begin, slowly but surely, to sever the tether that binds your inherent worth to the ephemeral applause of digital validation. You stop instinctively framing your thoughts in terms of captions. You start once again, to experience moments purely for their own sake, for your own internal resonance, rather than pre-filtering them through the potential gaze of a lens. And this, perhaps, is the profound, secret psychology underpinning the choices of many who remain silent, a deep, aching craving for unvarnished authenticity in a digital space where almost everything feels, by design, meticulously staged. It's crucial to understand that this stance is not born out of a Luddite-like hatred for social media itself, nor is it a sign of being inherently anti-technology or anti-social. Rather, it stems from a quiet, resolute refusal to allow the entirety of one's rich, multifaceted life to be reduced to a sanitized collection of highlights. These individuals grasp, with profound clarity, how easily perception can be manipulated, how effortlessly narratives can be manufactured. Consequently, they begin to place an almost sacred value on the intangible, on that which simply cannot be captured, filtered, and posted. The profound resonance of silence, the quiet gravitas of true depth, the raw beauty of imperfection, and the unyielding purity of truth. For some, the ultimate decision to withdraw from the public feed arises from a profound sense of emotional burnout. Perhaps they once enthusiastically shared every detail, every joy, every moment, until one day the entire act began to feel hollow, unreal. They came to a stark realization. With every beautiful thing they shared, an invisible, relentless pressure mounted, a silent imperative to constantly outdo their previous post, to maintain a certain image. They were no longer genuinely living their lives. They were ceaselessly performing them. And so, they disengaged, quietly, without fanfare. No dramatic announcement, no farewell post, just a slow, gradual, almost imperceptible disappearance from the relentless churn of the feed. But here lies a critical point that is so often profoundly misunderstood. The act of not posting does not signify an absence of feeling. It certainly doesn't imply a lack of care or engagement with the world. On the contrary, it often suggests an intensity of care, a deep reverence for presence, for genuine meaning, and for the sacred act of protecting what feels intrinsically holy and inviolable to the self. There exists a powerful concept in psychology known as psychological ownership. It describes that profound, deeply personal feeling that something, be it a cherished thought, a vivid memory, or a transformative experience, belongs exclusively and intrinsically to you. And the moment you broadcast it, share it publicly, that precious, singular sense of ownership often begins to subtly, almost imperceptibly, fade. The moment becomes shared property, instantly vulnerable to the often harsh glare of public judgment, the distortions of misinterpretation, or even the sting of mockery. Thus, those who choose not to post are frequently engaged in a conscious act of guarding their profound sense of ownership over life itself. They choose to keep their moments inviolate, untouched, deeply private, and pure. And perhaps, when viewed through this lens, their silence isn't a manifestation of sadness or social withdrawal at all. Perhaps, instead, it is a quiet, yet utterly liberating form of freedom. Consider, for a moment, your own experience. When was the last time you engaged in something truly meaningful, something that deeply moved you, and didn't feel that almost immediate, reflexive urge to share it? When did you last laugh until your sides hurt, cry tears of catharsis, or achieve a personal triumph, and immediately think of capturing it for an online audience? That very reflex, that ingrained need to display, to document for public consumption, is not an inherent part of human nature. It is a deeply conditioned response. It is the insidious product of a decade of accumulating likes, shares, and the relentless dopamine loops that have effectively trained our brains to equate external validation with intrinsic value. And when an individual makes the conscious, deliberate choice to step outside that powerful, pervasive system, it can feel like an act of profound rebellion. But it is also, simultaneously, a powerful act of healing. In this newfound space, They begin the beautiful process of rediscovering the profound simplicity of doing things purely for themselves, purely for the inherent joy of the experience. Cooking a delicious meal without ever pausing to photograph it, embarking on a transformative journey without feeling the need to tag their location, experiencing profound emotions without the burden of having to immediately articulate and explain them to an unseen audience. Within that sanctuary of personal experience, something vital awakens, a profound, self-sufficient form of self-awareness that utterly transcends the need for an external audience, an applause, or a like. However, it is also important to acknowledge that not everyone who abstains from posting does so from a place of serene, self-possessed peace. For some, the driving force is rooted in a deep-seated fear. The fear of harsh judgment, the sting of rejection, or the profound discomfort of being fundamentally misunderstood. Social media, in its relentless pursuit of transparency, has inadvertently amplified a subtle, yet deeply insidious, form of anxiety that psychologists term self-presentational pressure. It is the constant, nagging awareness that you are perpetually being watched, even when no one is actively looking. And for countless individuals, this invisible, omnipresent gaze is utterly exhausting. They are haunted by the worry that their words might be misconstrued, their intentions misinterpreted, or, perhaps even worse, that their carefully crafted messages might simply be ignored, lost in the overwhelming deluge of content. And so, they retreat, not because they lack the desire for genuine connection, but because the perceived cost of visibility feels exorbitantly high, the emotional stakes too great. They harbor a profound desire to be seen, yes, but only to be seen times truly, authentically, not superficially, through a curated lens. And here lies another striking irony. Sometimes, the quietest individuals in the digital realm are the very ones whose inner minds are a whirlwind of the loudest, most complex thoughts. They are not absent. On the contrary, they are overflowing with insights, emotions, and observations. They simply choose stillness over spectacle, internal processing over external display. Indeed, there's a deep, almost spiritual, philosophical undertone to this chosen silence. In a world that ceaselessly screams, "Look at me, validate my existence," the deliberate act of choosing invisibility becomes a powerful form of self-definition, a quiet assertion that declares, "My existence transcends and extends far beyond your fleeting perception." They might scroll through the carefully constructed lives of others, nodding in quiet understanding, smiling at shared joys, sometimes even aching with empathy for unseen struggles. But they rarely project their own narratives, for they have come to understand a profound truth that eludes most. Not everything you experience, not every profound inner shift, is ever meant to be witnessed by another soul. Sometimes, the most transformative, the most sacred things in life, be it the quiet unfolding of personal growth, the searing pain of grief, or the profound alchemy of personal transformation, happen entirely in silence, unseen, unposted. And when one has journeyed through enough of these intensely private transformations, a powerful realization dawns. Being unseen is not synonymous with being insignificant. On the contrary, it is precisely in these quiet, unobserved spaces that true identity is times formed, organically and authentically, rather than merely times performed times for an audience. Herein lies the profound paradox. Social media, in its inception, was ingeniously designed to foster connection, to weave a vast global tapestry of shared human experience. Yet, with heartbreaking frequency, it often leaves individuals feeling more profoundly isolated than ever before. When you consciously choose to step away from the relentless cycle of posting, you cease chasing ephemeral digital closeness and begin, instead, the arduous, yet deeply rewarding work of rebuilding and nurturing real times connections. You start to discern, with a newfound clarity, who genuinely checks in on you without the constant prompt of a public update. You learn to recognize who truly remembers you without the need for digital reminders. That rare, authentic kind of connection, raw, unbroadcasted, unadorned, feels immeasurably heavier, warmer, and infinitely more real. And the individuals who choose not to post, they inhabit that sacred space. They meticulously cultivate relationships that transcend the need for digital proof, valuing the substance over the spectacle. They discover profound comfort in the sanctity of the unshared moment, allowing life to unfold organically in all its beautiful messiness, without the constant, subconscious pressure to transmute it into content. A significant aspect of this choice also revolves around what might be termed identity security. It is the profound, unwavering certainty of knowing precisely who you are, even when not a single external eye is watching. When you are truly comfortable in your own internal company, you simply do not require an external audience to validate your inherent worth. This is not a manifestation of arrogance, it is the deep, abiding quietude of peace. And with an almost delicious irony, these very individuals who seldom, if ever, post online are often the ones who possess the most captivating, the most compelling stories to tell. But they meticulously save those stories, those rich tapestries of experience, for the intimate setting of a shared table, for the warmth of direct eye contact, rather than casting them into the impersonal void of a screen. Because for them, genuine connection is not quantitatively measured in a tally of comments or likes. It is found in the profound resonance of shared silence, in the knowing glance of eyes meeting across a table, in the spontaneous, uninhibited laughter that needs no witnesses, no digital documentation. These are the individuals who, in their quietude, carry entire worlds within them. They process experiences with remarkable depth, observe the subtle currents of life constantly, and understand with an intuitive, unspoken wisdom. They do not require the world to applaud their mere existence. They simply need to live it fully and authentically. And perhaps, just perhaps, in a world so desperately, frantically eager to be seen, their profound silence isn't a flaw to be corrected or an absence to be filled. Perhaps it serves as a potent mirror, reflecting back to the rest of us a forgotten truth, that not everything truly meaningful must times be shared. That sometimes the most profoundly human act you can undertake is to safeguard something, to hold it entirely, intimately, and exclusively for yourself. You know what's truly fascinating? The longer someone consciously chooses to remain disconnected from the incessant hum of social media, the more profoundly they begin to perceive and interact with the world around them. Colors seem to bloom with a richer vibrancy. Time itself appears to expand, unfolding at a more leisurely, deliberate pace. Conversations resonate with a newfound depth, feeling infinitely fuller and more substantial. It is as if the very act of stepping away from the digital noise serves as a profound recalibration, making everything times, real times, again. Because when you finally cease performing for an unseen audience, you begin truly to time's experience. There is an exquisite, quiet beauty in simply moving through life without feeling the compulsive need for photographic proof of every single step taken. You are liberated from the tyranny of worrying about the perfect angle, the ideal lighting, or the cleverest caption. You are simply times there, utterly present, fully alive, completely immersed, times inside, times the moment, rather than perpetually observing it from a detached, external vantage point. And that unadulterated, unmediated experience is a profound gift that social media, in its very design, rarely permits us anymore. But the psychology underpinning this choice extends far beyond mere personal preference or aesthetic taste. It is deeply rooted in the fundamental mechanisms by which our brains process validation and reward. Every single time we dare to post something online, a photo, a thought, a fleeting emotion, and it garners attention, be it in the form of likes, comments, or hearts, our brains release dopamine. This is the very same powerful neurochemical involved in both reward circuitry and the insidious nature of addiction. Over time, a craving for that digital validation takes root, growing steadily. We subtly begin to reframe our experiences, thinking of them in terms of shareable moments rather than simply authentic, lived moments. Now, imagine an individual who consciously, deliberately resists this potent, expertly engineered loop, someone who actively chooses to disconnect from this powerful dopamine cycle. This is not merely disinterest, it is a profound act of discipline, a testament to an elevated level of self-awareness required to resist a system meticulously designed to keep you perpetually hooked. Individuals who choose not to post frequently exhibit what psychologists refer to as a strong, internal locus of control. This sophisticated psychological term signifies that their deep-seated sense of worth, their happiness, and their emotional equilibrium are derived predominantly from within themselves, rather than being contingent upon external approval or validation. They simply do not require the digital echo of "you're enough" to genuinely believe it within their own hearts. And here's an even more compelling revelation. Studies have consistently shown that people who embark on extended breaks from either posting content or consuming it on social media platforms often report a measurable, significant increase in both their emotional stability and their overall life satisfaction. This transformative effect occurs because when your fundamental sense of identity is no longer being constantly mirrored back to you by an external, often distorting, digital reflection, it begins to solidify. It becomes intrinsically real, anchored deeply within your own being. You are no longer compelled to painstakingly edit your life into something palatable and digestible for public consumption. Instead, you are free to live it authentically in all its messy, beautiful, unfiltered complexity. And perhaps that is the most profound, most authentic rebellion of all, to strive to remain whole, undivided, and unfragmented in a world that relentlessly rewards broken pieces and curated snippets. Yet, it's crucial to acknowledge that silence online is not invariably synonymous with serenity. Sometimes, beneath that quiet surface, lies a profound exhaustion. For countless individuals, social media initially presented itself as a vibrant, promising avenue for connection, only to ultimately leave them feeling profoundly drained and depleted. There is a subtle, insidious emotional fatigue that inevitably arises from constantly witnessing the meticulously curated highlight reels of everyone else's lives, all while you are still painstakingly attempting to piece together your own messy behind the scenes. You begin to compare yourself even when you consciously resolve not to. You start to question your own inherent worth, even when your rational mind knows better. And eventually, some people make the courageous decision to step away, not out of bitterness or resentment, but out of a profound, urgent need for self-preservation. They arrive at the liberating realization that they do not owe the world a perpetual performance. They understand, with a quiet certainty, that they do not owe anyone an explanation for their silence. And, most importantly, they no longer feel the relentless pressure to perpetually prove their happiness just to be believed. This, perhaps, is one of the quiet, yet profoundly important truths of our generation. We have inadvertently confused visibility with intrinsic value. We have mistakenly assumed that in order to truly matter, we must be noticed, applauded, and recognized. But true meaning, genuine impact, does not require an audience, does not necessitate witnesses. Some of the most deeply meaningful moments of your entire life, the pivotal ones that irrevocably shape the very core of who you are, will unfold without a single other person watching. No cameras capturing the scene, no captions attempting to distill the emotion, no audience to applaud, just you, wholly present. And perhaps this is what those who choose not to post understand most intimately. They know, deep in their bones, that privacy is not a synonym for loneliness. Instead, it is a profound, sacred form of intimacy with oneself. Because when you finally cease broadcasting every fleeting thought, every nascent emotion, you begin, once again, to truly hear your own inner voice. You start the vital process of reconnecting with those precious, often fragile, parts of yourself that gradually became lost amidst the overwhelming digital noise. Your quiet, often unacknowledged desires, your unspoken, vulnerable fears, the subtle, unwavering guidance of your own inner compass. And in today's frenetic, outwardly focused world, that process of profound self-reconnection is something profoundly spiritual. It is not a withdrawal from life. It is, in its deepest sense, a homecoming. Of course, this journey is not always a serene, untroubled path. There will inevitably be moments of doubt, moments when you wonder if your silence renders you entirely invisible, if you are falling irrevocably behind while everyone else seems to be performing relentless, public progress. But with the gentle passage of time, you begin to perceive something truly beautiful, something deeply reassuring. Your inherent worth does not simply vanish when nobody is actively looking. It remains steadfast and unwavering, like the deep, comforting hum of a quiet room after the chaos of a storm has passed. And perhaps this quiet, internal assurance is what true confidence truly looks like. Not the loud, flamboyant declaration of self online, but the calm, self-possessed certainty of self offline. Some, caught in the relentless current of the digital age, might flippantly ask, if you didn't post it, did it even happen? But the profound, irrefutable truth is that the moments, the experiences, the quiet epiphanies that shape you most deeply and profoundly rarely, if ever, make it onto a public feed. Your personal growth, the searing pain of your heartbreaks, your countless private victories, your quiet, unsung acts of kindness, they reside not in the transient realm of social media, but in the sacred sanctuary of memory. And perhaps that is more than enough. When psychologists delve into the concept of authentic self-expression, they place immense emphasis on congruence, the seamless, honest alignment between who you genuinely are on the inside and the persona you choose to present to the world. Yet, in this age saturated with filters, curated personas, and meticulously crafted narratives, that vital alignment is constantly, insidiously distorted. You slowly, almost imperceptibly, begin to inhabit a version of yourself specifically curated and edited for external approval. So, when an individual consciously chooses not to post, it can be seen as their deeply personal, profoundly powerful way of preserving that fragile, precious truth, of maintaining congruence between their rich inner world and the outer world. They do not require an entire audience to witness their feelings, to validate their reality. They do not need to capture every breathtaking sunset with a camera to forever remember how it felt to stand beneath its glorious hue. They choose, instead, to live their lives fully, intensely, and quietly. And here is another profound paradox. Those who choose to live quietly often feel life with an astonishing intensity that eludes others. They are not perpetually distracted by the performance of life, by the obligation to document. Instead, they absorb the countless subtle details that most people, caught in the rush, simply miss. The exquisite, nuanced way the light shifts and dances on a textured wall, the pregnant pause that hangs in the air just before someone speaks a significant truth, the faint, distant echo of laughter carried on the wind. They are utterly, completely present. And presence, in our frenetic, attention-demanding world, is the rarest, most precious currency of all. However, that very profound presence can sometimes lead to misunderstanding. Others might hastily label them as detached, enigmatic, perhaps even cold or aloof. Yet, if you take the time to look a little closer, to peer beneath the superficial judgment, you will discover that their silence is not an empty void. It is, unequivocally, depth. It is the profound calm that arises from no longer feeling the exhausting obligation to constantly explain your true self in order to be genuinely understood. There is a quiet, unwavering confidence that blossoms from the profound realization of not needing to be known by everyone, but rather simply understood, truly and deeply, by a cherished few. And that profound understanding is what the individuals who choose not to post grasp most intimately. They comprehend that not every truth, not every vulnerability is meant for the indiscriminate gaze of the crowd. They know that certain sacred parts of your being deserve to remain utterly untouched by the cold logic of algorithms and the fleeting whims of public opinion. Because once something is cast into the public arena, it ceases to be purely, unequivocally yours. It becomes open to endless interpretation, to often harsh judgment, to the fleeting and often trivializing currents of a trend. And perhaps some moments, some truths, are simply too sacred, too fragile for that kind of exposure.